have a problem. I think I, like most people, am pretty good at judging when a game is good or bad. Sometimes it's the obvious stuff like a soundtrack that'll be stuck in your head for weeks or months after you've beaten the game, combat that just gives you this overwhelming feeling of satisfaction when you finally master it, or a world so immersive it seems as though you could spend a week in there without even realizing a single second has gone by. Silksong meets or even exceeds all of these criteria. This game is, by every conceivable metric, undeniably outstanding. It's a paragon of high quality and a brilliant example of what developers are capable of when unbound by corporate investors, tight deadlines, and creative restraints. In many ways, Silksong is the most pure evolution of what a metroidvania is supposed to be, yet I still have a problem. Despite the fact that I know this is a good game, a great game even, I'm just not sure that evolution is an objectively good thing, and in comparing it directly to another indie metroidvania from this year, we can start to see why. So let's start with what exactly makes this game such a pure evolution of metroidvanias. I want you to think about your favorite metroidvania. Once you have it, try to distill the experience of that game down to 2 or 3 words. Feel free to leave your answer right below the subscribe button. Now, considering there are well over 100,000 active words in English and millions more if you chose to use a different language, nice outside of the box thinking if you did by the way, it's extremely unlikely that your chosen words match mine. That said, I do think all of our words are probably close to the same general idea: exploration and progression. The best metroidvanias are almost like more focused and contained open world games. Games where your entire goal is to go in a direction and see what you find. Maybe it'll be an upgrade, maybe a new area, maybe a boss. You never really know, and that's what makes these games so endlessly rewarding. Silksong is excellent at both of these, but I think its exploration is a bit stronger than its progression. The level of authenticity in how you go about navigating this world really is up there with some of the best in the medium. You spend most of the game being lost. A lot of times you won't even have access to a map. You'll be totally blind, roaming through these endless tunnels and hallways in search of, well, anything. The only way to figure out where to go next is by wandering around, testing random things, and using your mental map to consider all of your pathways and options. That feeling of being truly lost is something that not many games are willing to confront the player with. So many games are too afraid to allow the player to wander off the beaten path and be confused about where to go or what to do next. They want to ensure that the player always has a clear road ahead of them with a concrete understanding of exactly what obstacles will stand in their way and how to overcome them. This isn't necessarily a bad thing either. However, the alternative, and what Silksong does, creates this feeling that you're not playing a game with markers telling you to go from point A to point B. No, you're this explorer traversing an unknown world in an attempt to make sense of this labyrinth that seems to contort and bend around you with each step that you take. Then, of course, there's that iconic scale. The world of Hollow Knight had moments that felt like you had surely gotten to the end, like there couldn't possibly be anything beyond the area you just reached. You'd then cross through a door that you thought would lead to another room with a dead end and a treasure chest, but are instead met with an entirely new area, equal both in size and density to the one you just left. Yet somehow, Silksong makes the original game feel small in comparison. Its moments like these are so frequent and grand that it genuinely feels overwhelming. I mean, there was a point in my playthrough where I thought I was near the end of the map. I figured I had probably seen around 70 to 80% of the game, when suddenly it became clear to me that I might not have even reached the halfway point. It really is unbelievable. Building on this authenticity is one of the more controversial parts of the game, the difficulty. I do believe this is here for a reason though. Part of it is to push you to play more aggressively, to really force the player into a style that fits the main character Hornet. Overwhelming agility, evasiveness, and aggression. The more substantial effect that this difficulty has on the game, however, lies in the world itself. When I consider why environmental hazards deal half your health, or why even the most basic enemy scales to Clark Kent, I came to a conclusion that I think makes sense. Team Cherry wants this world to feel impossibly threatening, since that too builds on the authenticity of exploring it. Think about it. If you were exploring a hostile environment like the Sahara Desert, it wouldn't suddenly become easy and safe just because you have enough water and supplies. No, it's still a massive wasteland that's actively trying to kill you for existing in it. That's why this world feels almost exhausting to explore. Everything is a threat. You're never safe. To really illustrate this, take a look at Hornet's options early in the game next to this early game enemy. This is the Beastfly. It flies around and charges back and forth to attack. That's its entire moveset. What makes it so threatening is the fact that it, like all enemies in the game, damages you on contact, even when it's not charging. Combine this with the fact that hitting it doesn't stop its charge, and suddenly you can't simply attack and move on. You have to consider where both you and the enemy will be after the attack. Now take a look at Hornet's options. This dive is pretty risky since while it does let you bounce on enemies, if you miss the timing or spacing, it'll end without you landing a hit and you'll just take contact damage instead. All of her other attacks have relatively short range, forcing you to get up close and personal with enemies that, again, damage you on contact. When you put all of this together, you get a random throwaway that can easily deal substantial amounts of damage and, in higher numbers, overwhelm you. This is why letting your guard down for even a moment can quickly send you right back to your most recent bench. Those two add to the stress of exploring the world. The benches are spread extremely thin, and fast travel is equally scarce. Just getting from point A to point B is a challenge in this game, and it's all part of the experience that Team Cherry is trying to build. Ultimately, that's the main goal of Silksong. Create a real and genuine feeling of exploration and getting lost in a hostile world that'll do everything in its power to stop you. This fits with the narrative of the game as well, that I obviously won't go into due to spoilers. Silksong does one last thing that separates it from a lot of other metroidvanias. Granted, there are plenty that do this, but it's something that I really appreciate regardless, and it goes a long way in making the game feel the way it does. Silksong's world feels alive, and I mean this in a literal sense. In games like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls, you wander around in a dead world, a world where all the most significant events have already happened and all the most important people are already dead. Silksong isn't like that. This is a world where things are actively happening. There are multiple populated towns and settlements, living characters with vibrant personalities, and a threat that you're actively trying to stop before it destroys the world and not after. Characters like Sherma and Chakra are already beloved fan favorites, and when you play the game yourself, it's not hard to see why. Sherma's genuine excitement to explore the world and complete her pilgrimage, all while being just a bit too oblivious of the things around her, are hard not to get attached to. While this is all a matter of preference, that idea of a living world, and especially the characters, will be important later, so go ahead and toss it in a folder for now and don't forget about it. Before we move on, I would be remiss to leave out the music of both of these games. Music that you can listen to with today's sponsor, the Manta Sleep Mask. Now, I know what you're thinking. What do you mean listen to music with a sleep mask? How is such a brilliant feat of technology even possible? Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked. The Manta Sound Mask not only grants you the total blackout that you're used to with the normal Manta Sleep Mask, but it even allows you to play music through the built-in Bluetooth headphones. Thanks to this, you can drown out the voices by listening to Hearts Stay Unchanged. On top of that, it's just as comfortable as the normal Manta Sleep Mask with all of the same features. You've got the adjustable pads, the super soft yet breathable material, and the same total darkness when you throw on the mask. The Manta Sound Mask is a step above the normal Manta Sleep Mask, so go ahead and click the link in the description to try out the Manta Sleep Mask or the Manta Sound Sleep Mask for yourself. You can even get a quick 10% off using my code. Okay, let's get back to the video. I hope it's obvious just how great I think Silksong is. I say that because I'm gonna be pretty hard on it at first, but understand that there's more to this story, and that I don't hate the game. Who am I kidding? This isn't gonna stop anybody. Silksong has a clear vision of what it's trying to be. However, I think that vision can get in the way of convenience. On a fundamental level, there's nothing wrong with a game inconveniencing the player. In fact, I think it can be a useful tool to enhance certain parts of certain games. The problem here is that the lengths the game is willing to go to achieve this vision can feel a bit excessive. Let's start with the more tame stuff and work our way up. The placement of benches and the lack of fast travel can make traversing the world a pain. You'll often find yourself speeding across areas you've already seen dozens of times just to get from one place to another. This may be the definition of inconvenient, but it's easily the most tame. Being broke, on the other hand, is something that's a bit too relatable. Far too frequently, you'll trudge through a long area, fight through hordes of enemies that live too long and hit too hard, navigate around obstacles that deal half your health, and finally reach a bench or a fast travel point only for it to require more rosaries than you have. Now your only option is to either leave and make that very same trek a second time, or simply ignore this bench and hope that future enemies will give you what you need, allowing you to return to the checkpoint. This is the case with maps as well. Even once you find a merchant, you still have to buy the map, and if you can't afford it, you're in the exact same position as before. Tools being limited are where things start to get a little out of control. They're a great addition to this game. Unfortunately, the fact that their supply is limited doesn't really work for bosses. The loop of these tools being used to kill enemies that grant you materials to replenish said tools is great, but when it comes to bosses, you don't gain any resources from them. This means that if you lose to a boss too many times, you'll run out of tools and be forced to either fight them in a weakened state or stop fighting the boss completely for a bit and grind. I think it's obvious why both of these options are terrible. Contact damage is a problem for a bit of a subtle reason. See, when it comes to contact damage, everything is an attack. If an enemy jumps, rolls, dashes, anything, all of those are attacks because touching the enemy will hurt you. Hollow Knight, and especially the sequel Silksong, usually do a pretty good job of understanding this idea, but there are exceptions where an enemy can move faster than you can react. The problem with contact damage in Silksong is twofold. First, the quantity of enemies can often overwhelm you and make it nearly impossible to avoid coming into contact with any of them. This is rare and can, presumably, be entirely prevented if you're good enough. The second and more significant problem is that most bosses deal 2 damage on contact. For a lot of the game, you'll have only 5 or 6 masks. This means by simply existing too close to a boss, you'll lose 30 to 40% of your health. Even stunned bosses still have active hitboxes on contact. This is insane. I have no idea how it got past testing. The punishment for getting too close to a stationary hitbox that is not always clearly defined should not be the same punishment as failing to avoid a clearly telegraphed and animated attack. This obviously leads to you dying far more often, and when you do, you get to see the absolute pinnacle of what this game is capable of when it comes to wasting your time. Runbacks. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how these still exist in video games. Even FromSoft stopped doing them. Granted, they're still trying to figure out the whole pause button thing, but baby steps, I guess. The problem with Silksong's runbacks, though, perfectly encapsulates the problem with the game as a whole. It's not that the runbacks are too long, sometimes they are, or that they're too challenging. No, it's the amount of precision and focus required, along with the disproportionate punishment for even a single mistake. If you get hit by an enemy and fall into an environmental hazard that deals 2 damage, one error just costs you half of your health before you even got a chance to fight the boss. Now you can either continue to a boss that'll kill you in 2 hits instead of 3, or you can reset, go back to the bench, and try the entire run back again from the start. This problem is slightly alleviated by the fact that you get full silk when returning to the spot that you died at, but that creates another problem. With how much damage these bosses can do and the enormous amount of health that they have, don't you want to have that silk for an extra heal or damage rather than burning it the moment you enter a fight because you made one mistake in a platforming gauntlet that you've already completed 7 times? All of this, from the outlandish damage to the lengthy runbacks to the overwhelming punishment for failure, point to one simple idea. In Silksong, you are not allowed to lose focus for even a single moment, and honestly, it's hard to feel like the game isn't wasting your time with a lot of these decisions, especially when you compare it to what may be my current favorite metroidvania of all time, Ender Magnolia. Ender Magnolia is not a flawless game, but the problems that it addresses and the ways in which it chooses to approach popular trends in games like it felt almost intrusively vindicating. Here, let me show you. It starts with those checkpoints from before. Every single boss in the game, with the exception of 1 or 2, has a checkpoint right next to the fight, so you die, hop off the bench, and jump right back in. No wasted time navigating long, arduous platforming gauntlets that you've already completed. This allows for 2 things that might not be immediately obvious. First, it lets the areas be as large and challenging as they want, since the game knows these challenges are isolated. They don't have to be considered in the context of sprinting through to reach a boss. They can instead act as standalone challenges that test the player with powerful enemies and obstacles. Second is that they allow the bosses themselves to be as creative and complex as they want without feeling unfair or frustrating, since the player, on average, will be able to spend more time learning and mastering the boss. Magnolia also removes one of my personal biggest problems with 2D games like this: contact damage. Enemies only damage you when they attack. I love this since it makes every hit feel like my fault. I didn't get trapped in a bad position or clipped by a jump that no human could have reacted to. I just failed to respond to the enemy's attack. Fast travel is unlocked relatively early, and once it is, you can use it anywhere at any time. The map, on the other hand, is unlocked from the very start and will not only automatically fill itself out as you explore, but will even turn an area blue to let you know you found everything and completed it. There are even little things like instantly being able to rematch a boss immediately after defeating them. All of this may make it seem like the game is easy, and it certainly is far less brutal than Silksong, but it's still plenty challenging. The brilliant part about this challenge, however, is the amount of customization available to the player. Due to the amount that you can alter your moveset by changing your weapons, specials, and relics, combined with how non-committal all of this customization is, you're able to create a strategy specifically tailored to whatever boss you're fighting. Each boss will excel against some playstyles and struggle against others, so the game isn't solely about mastering their movesets. It's about understanding what their strategy is and building a plan to counter it. Silksong has an incredible level of customization as well, but it's a bit more committal than Magnolia's, since the former's upgrades are extremely valuable utility, while the latter is just for damage and moveset alterations. For example, if I'm using the Beast Crest, in order to see where I am on the map using the compass, I have to spend a memory locket. In Ender Magnolia, a similar resource would just result in a bit more damage. In short, upgrades in Magnolia are helpful, upgrades in Silksong are sometimes borderline necessary, and because you're forced to spend resources on said essential upgrades, your customization is relatively limited when compared to Magnolia. Please keep that relatively in mind, because I am not saying Silksong's customization is limited. I'm saying that it's a bit more restrictive than Ender Magnolia's. This all contributes to the game as a whole feeling borderline excessively convenient. There's basically no wasted time, yet there's way more to this game than merely being convenient and filled with quality of life features. It's also just a fantastic Metroidvania. The music is some of the best in the genre, and quite frankly, some of the best in indie games as a whole. The pacing is smooth throughout, with each area having its own unique and distinct character, mechanics, and ideas without ever overstaying its welcome. Most of the bosses were so good that I rematched right after beating them because I just wanted to experience the fight again. And while all of that may make the game sound perfect, it's really not. Ironically enough, this convenience is actually going to be a problem for a lot of people playing Ender Magnolia. This ability to always return to a checkpoint or to fast travel for free whenever and wherever you want can, in a way, lessen the scale of the game's world. It feels smaller when you can always get to where you need to go without any friction. The lack of contact damage, while preferable to me, allows the player to less carefully and meticulously memorize memorize the movement of every enemy. In Silksong, you have to not only understand how enemies attack, but thanks to contact damage, you also have to understand how they move and behave. In a way, this can lead to a deeper appreciation of the enemies you face. Both of these together, the fast travel and the lack of contact damage, create an even more substantial problem. Ender Magnolia lacks that feeling of desperation that's often found in Silksong. You can even see this in the map. You always know where you are, and you always have a way to get out. Even if you do die, you don't drop anything significant. I really don't like the mechanic of losing some kind of currency or experience on death and being forced to go reclaim it, yet that mechanic provides each encounter with higher stakes. It creates this very palpable tension as you explore. Ender Magnolia is more convenient, sure, but it's also safer and less punishing. Alright, let's grab that folder from before. It's finally time to open it back up. There's something meaningful about those times in Silksong and games like it where you're truly out of your element. The world is totally against you and there's seemingly no way out. Those sequences where you're entirely on your own. You check your map, see that you're in uncharted territory, and stop for a moment before realizing that there really is only one option here. Press forward into the unknown, into the unforgiving abyss that threatens to swallow you whole, all in hopes that you somehow find a light at the end of this tunnel. Knowing that if you fail, you'll lose everything you've collected up to this point, that you'll be forced to return to this nightmarish place a second time with even more at stake, creates this suffocating anxiety that influences every decision you make. Then suddenly, like a blinding beam of light piercing through the dark, you hear it. That all too familiar sound of a character you recognize. With this sound comes a friend. With it comes potential information. With it comes hope. The stress that these moments cause, along with the relief that washes over you when you finally overcome them, really is something special, and they don't exist in Magnolia and games like it. I won't pretend they're not annoying sometimes. I mean, I won't even pretend they're not annoying a lot of times, but I can't ignore the impact that moments like those can have. It's funny, both of these games have problems that practically mirror each other, but when you really think about it, they're less problems and more choices. It's why when I look at a game like Silksong, despite the fact that I do very definitively prefer Magnolia, I can't outright say it's better. For some people it will be. Honestly, for most people it probably will due to its more accessible nature. Yet that doesn't inherently make it better or worse, just like how the choices Silksong made aren't objectively better or worse. Silksong is less worried about ensuring the player has a good time and is more concerned about creating a very specific experience. Regardless of whether or not that experience is for you personally, I really do think there's value in creating it. But would Silksong, or games as a whole for that matter, be better if the main character was overpowered or underpowered? Check out this video on that.